Welcome to this week's episode of the Big Eyes podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. This week we are about to break down probably one of the biggest manga moments like currently that's about to happen. And to do this, I have a returning guest and my good friend Mills. He is back. So welcome, Mills.
Hey, what's up? Good to be back. Feels good to be back.
Yeah, definitely. Happy you're back because me and you have kind of a lot to talk about. Like there's there's a lot of things we have to uncover for people to get ready for what is about to happen in My Hero Academia, which is the big paranormal liberation front versus the heroes. So how are you feeling right now, latest chapter, like where it ended, like how are you feeling about it right now?
So I think the latest chapter, actually probably the chapter before that, I would say probably chapter 258, kind of inspired me because of you can kind of feel the tension of the things that are going on. And I say that in regards to like we're getting a lot of these cliffhangery endings with a lot of the chapters. And it isn't just kind of like wrapping up and it's like, oh, we'll see you next time. It's more so like, and watch what happens next type of deal. Um, but we're getting a lot of these cliffhangers, and I think what happened in at least 258, where it was just something brief. It was like the day that no heroes were left in the city or something along those lines. Maybe it was 257 or something rather, but it was like one of those chapters where I was like, oh, something is going on. And I originally thought it was like, oh, does that mean everyone's about to die? But no, but a lot of things have just inspired me, and I would say sort of in the latest chapter it all kind of came to a head, and it's inspired me to at least go look back heavily at everything that's going on and everything that's tying in, because kind of I would say the whole series thus far has been kind of building up to this moment. Everything from season one of the actual show or the early chapters of it is kind of leading up to now, and it's kind of like a spectacular thing to kind of see before our own eyes.
Yeah, definitely. Like you can tell this is kind of the big thing that they have really been building to. This is where a lot of loose ends, I'll say, we're starting to tie together. You start to see big plans finally start to come to fruition for even like the League of Villains. You see even for Deku, like you start seeing his purpose um become more clear of like what is his really his role for having one for all. And yeah, I definitely feel that this moment that's coming is is something that we have been all kind of been waiting for, of just this like this big battle of the forces of good versus the forces of evil, and seeing that, seeing this come and like start to meet right in the middle.
Right.
um
I think just in general, especially with the specifics of this chapter 259, it's kind of like their whole plan is coming together. Is more so what 259 is, because they had kind of have a plan. They've been sort of forewarned about this major attack that's going to happen due to some very good spying and some very good other major things that have happened throughout the entire city, and just investigation work by the police in the city and everything like that. They've kind of been tipped off to what's happening, and this is kind of like a plan coming together, with all of the heroes deciding they're going to leave the city because they need as much heroes as they can, because they're hearing an army of in the hundred of thousands are coming to take over everything. And so they pretty much equip themselves with every hero possible, and they go storm the hospital. And that's kind of like where we end up, because the hospital, I mean, just reading these chapters for the last number of weeks and reading in a segmented fashion, and it's kind of why I like enjoying binge reading of this entire thing as opposed to like reading chapter by chapter, but I can't help myself, to be honest with you. um it's why I love binge reading, because you kind of get to see the entire story play out all together, as opposed to kind of like waiting from chapter to chapter, living with the events in this chapter as kind of its own. and not really seeing it for what it was, because as you said, there's a lot of through lines that have been building up and everything that's been going through, and it's really building up to this major moment that we have here.
Yeah, definitely. I'm with you on that in terms of just I really do enjoy binge reading all of uh everything like multiple chapters at once instead of like chapter by chapter, especially kind of what's been going on in My Hero, because like it's really one big story, and sometimes reading chapter by chapter you're only getting kind of clips of what's going on instead of just kind of like a full kind of view of what of the picture that they're trying to or like the situation. But one big, I guess you could say, kind of loosen or something that kind of comes together is it comes with the doctor, Dr. Maruta Shiga, who was once who had a name change. He was originally Dr. Darumo Ujiko, um, but
No, no,
because of
he's still that. I mean, he's still that, I believe. I think just his actual real name, which was revealed in this chapter, like they kind of like had Maruta Shiga, um, was the real name referenced in this chapter, and I think that's the thing that's eventually going to change. Like,
oh yeah,
once
definitely.
it's yeah, once it's revealed. So, you know, I don't know if you want to share this, but yeah, in terms of just his actual name, there's like some backstory behind it that didn't actually sit well with fans, especially in Japan.
Yeah, definitely. The backstory to his name is was a code name for human experimentation. This is come from the Anime News Network. Um, Ruta refers to the code name for human experimentation undertaken by the Imperial Japanese Army Unit 731 during the Second Sino-Japanese War of World War II. So they were using victims to use experimentation, and I think you know especially when it comes to what his real role is, which is experimentation, human experimentation inside the story. I could definitely see how that can not sit right with a lot of people.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I can see that as well. I get the kind of there's a lot of things with anime, and in terms of the names that they chose, there's always a history and or something behind the names, unless you're maybe like Dragon Ball, which is like just vegetables. But there's always like something behind the name, and they kind of took a very much so a darker route. Not completely mad at it, but I can see why people would be offended by this, especially considering this is kind of like a worldwide phenomenon at this point, people in Japan and things like that. And especially dealing with experimentation in World War II. This is kind of big things. If you read a lot about World War II, I find that period of history kind of interesting, as opposed to, I'm not normally a history buff. I find that period of history quite interesting. But in terms of all the experimentation that happened on a lot of like children, elderly, pregnant women, mentally handicapped, that were purposely, it says purposely infected with diseases, dissected, lobotomized, and amputated while still alive during this era. So it says that many have pointed out the name that Shiga Maruta in this week's Jump chapter has been brought up. Recollections of acts done in the past. I did not intend for my name to be associated with such. I take this matter very seriously and will change the name. That is what the My Hero Academia Hori Koshi has said about that. So we'll be getting a name change, but this doctor is pretty much like, when you talk about things coming full circle, you talk about episode 1 of this doctor. And
yeah,
I think it flew over people's head. It certainly flew over mine, and it took me more than one. I mean, I always thought he looked it, but I didn't know that they were kind of the same, since they never referenced the doctor's name in the first episode. Um, but you see that the doctor from the first episode of My Hero Academia, who originally diagnosed um, Deku as quirkless, is one and the same of the doctor that is currently part of the League of Nations, part of the paranormal. What is this? The paranormal
Paranormal Liberation Front.
part of the Paranormal Liberation Front that is really here, and more importantly, the man who created the Nomus, the man who is the right hand man to One for All, um, just everything, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and he, they really position him. He's really kind of the evil genius behind um a lot of things that for the League of Villains, like you said, the Nomus being the right hand man for um One for All, and even now, like the experimentation of what's going on with Shigaraki and like powering him up. But there's one thing that I mean, we've kind of talked about this outside of this, but how would you feel if the doctor was part of the reason why Deku didn't have a quirk? Like, what if he, like if there was like some long history behind him taking Deku's quirk, or some type of time? How would that make you feel if they slid that in?
So I would say I initially flirted with the idea as well, because I do think it's an interesting wrinkle having that doctor from episode 1 now kind of pulled up in episode, 259, and you see kind of the history of it, and they got a lot of history from it in terms of he's someone who's done a lot of, I mean, it's billed as for the general public, under his doctor distinction, like his, not necessarily his like evil doctor's distinction, but his regular distinction. He is a acclaimed doctor. He owns many orphanages, and he does a lot of philanthropic work. But you're learning all that philanthropic work has really kind of been underseated with a belly of evil, and it's like, it's a, sorry, not underseated, but featured under the underbelly of it all is kind of like evil. Like it's all this work, and you realize that he may have been stealing quirks from kids from this orphanages to feed for All for One, or he may have been using lost kids and orphans themselves, experimenting on them, creating them into nomus. We know, and it ties back to another chapter, which is why there's so much different threads going on there, because just a few chapters ago, right, um and especially a few episodes ago that you were talking about on this podcast, you talk about the whole Aizawa and Present Mike sort of situation, where you find out Kurogiri, which was the right hand man for Tomoru Shigaraki, he was a Nomu, but they discovered through a lot of experimentation themselves that he was originally a person who had class with President Mike and Aizawa when they were both in, in class 1A or class 2A at the time in UA high school. So he was originally Oboru Shirakumo, and he was one person. I mean, he died during a, just it's just, I think it was more so a freak accident that he kind of died during a mission. And then you find out that he was, instead of being like laid to rest or something along those lines, his body was being experimented, and he was being, you know, transformed into a Nomu. So you kind of like the whole doctor thing. It's it's insane to actually think about it, and it's insane to actually see all this experiment. It kind of like takes this entire thing, which is entire kind of kid show, to a new freaky dark kind of level, that they're doing experimentations on dead people, kids, stealing all their quirks and all these other things. And I think the doctor was highlighted a lot in this chapter, and they had to have just reason for kind of, moving in on him. And the one thing that they found, they managed to get a picture of a room that's not really accessible, and they saw a tiny Nomu. I mean, a Nomu the size of Kevin Hart, with running sneakers on, um with
And
eyes
that was
bulging like Bobby Portis. And
and that panel was so funny to me, because it really was like it's very hard to explain what that Nomu was. It was just, yeah, it was
but
just this
Nomus are
little tiny.
generally, yeah, they're mutants. Like, they're very, none of them look particularly good. The first Nomu that we saw looked like a damn bird. Um and they're still creating more Nomus, especially if you go back to the what was it? I think it was the Daika City. I don't know if it's called the Daika City arc, but whatever, the villains arc, that villain arc where you got all the
Yeah,
progression of the villains. Like you
and
go
we're
back.
definitely gonna touch on that soon because I feel that the uh the Battle of Daika or the Daika City arc was definitely it. That's where things really start to, I think, ramp up when it comes to this final battle of
Mhm.
what to come. You know, I think the battle of Daika or Daika City arc, it really starts letting us in on I know a lot of things, like because for I think the big thing too is that we really thought that you know All for One was really the big villain, and that's really the main villain that they kind of focused on. But within that arc, they start introducing other big villains that are like that were happening at the same time, and seeing how their missions kind of tied into what All for One is. So I think that arc really is the beginning of them being like, okay, we're about to go all, like, we've been hinting at this battle for a long time, and now I think that was the arc that we're really like, okay, now this is about to start. Like now you can get ready for what you've been waiting for a very long time.
So generally, I mean, and I just want to kind of frame this for sort of everybody who's listening right now, because there's a lot of things to sort of um, digest when it comes to building up for this moment that we're building up. And I hope, just as you said before, we hope it kind of lives up to the expectations, because this is, quite frankly, I mean, it is the Infinity War of arcs. It is the major battle with all the heroes, and this is kind of like the culmination of everyone's training thus far. This is the biggest thing that all the students have been involved in, kind of the biggest thing that the city has been put through, or just society itself has been put through, especially since losing their symbol of freedom, All Might, and having to sort of, pick up the scraps. But to kind of like frame this, for instance, I would say, and to kind of like tie up, link some like ends. This, I would say, the precursor for everything really kind of starts at the end of the Shai Hasaki sort of thing, which we literally just finished in the anime, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
so
And,
a lot of it is, and sorry to cut you off. um I say a lot of it starts there, because it's kind of like you get the kind of League of Villains, kind of like they're kind of stirring a little bit. And I think the League of Villains, it deserves a little, well, actually more than a little bit of conversation about these things, because first of all, when he takes, we see him take Overhaul's entire arm and things like that, and he gets a level of retribution. I'm talking about Tomura Shigaraki. He gets a level of retribution for that, but it's still not enough. And you get to you see him, and then you flash forward to a couple chapters later, and they're like living in this trap house in the middle of nowhere, where they're all crammed in. It's like six of them. There's only six. It's the League of Villains, but it might as well be like a group of bandits, because there's about like six or seven of them, and they're all pretty powerful on their own, but there's no army. How can they have any influence without any power? They're looking at Overhaul, and he's controlling all these things, and he's controlling like the black market and doing all these things, and has so much control, but the guys can barely find something to eat that's even really good. And they're living at the beginning of the, oh god, I forgot what what the name is. We're gonna continue to call it the Daika City arc. But um at the beginning of that arc, you kind of see that, and they have to prove themselves, and they go through this whole trial and tribulation. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, on the hero side of things, the world is still trying to live with, like, yo, Endeavor's the number one hero. Like, you got to be shitting me, like, right now. Like, he is awful, he is terrible, he is no All Might, he stinks. um
yeah, you definitely do see that.
yeah,
Um,
and he's even trying to deal with it himself. Like, you watch the latest episode, if you watch the latest episode, he's sitting down with with All Might himself, and he's asking him the question about the symbol of peace, and All Might's kind of like let him know, and they've been at odds forever because number one, number two, but like All Might has nothing in the game, and Endeavor has really kind of assumed the role as number one hero, but he's still he hears everything that's going on. He hears the people doubting him. He hears that he's not as good as All Might. He hears all these other things, and they have like this brief discussion about like what does the symbol of peace mean. And All Might pretty much extends to him like, listen, there's no way. I see everyone comparing to you to me. We're completely different people, and you need to find out what your kind of symbol of peace is and how you're going to instill, safety, and instill that sense of like calmness within the people with the hero work that you do. So you have to find that for yourself, and you have to get the people kind of on your side, and you have to build up that rapport with the people and build up the trust, kind of like he did. um and it's all, once again, it's all building up to this moment you talk about. And just running through quickly the whole Endeavor thing where he fought that Nomu and he nearly died and got his face completely scarred from it, and building it up, that was building it up as people, beginning to find trust in Endeavor, because he went all out and he sacrificed damn near his life to do all that. And once again, in parallel, the Daika City arc, where they're going over and they're destroying the entire city, and they're going through this, all the villains are going through their own metamorphoses and transformations and all this other stuff, and they're becoming stronger as well. So it's kind of like a tale of completely two sides between the heroes and the villains that are currently leading up to this entire thing.
Yeah.
um
I think one thing that you definitely did touch on too is Endeavor becoming the number one hero. And one thing too that isn't really stated but is alluded to is Endeavor hates how he got the number one hero. Like he hates
yeah,
how he got that
yeah,
that
because
title.
it was by default. It wasn't, he didn't earn it. It was by default. He lost, he attained it by default. He attained it because All Might can't go anymore, which has got to irk him.
Yeah, and I think that is one thing too where it's like he feels he hasn't earned this title. And not only does he not feel it, but the people feel it too, that he has not earned this title as number one hero. But regardless if they want him there or not, he's there. And he's going to have to figure out how to be the number one hero. And he's trying to learn that pretty much during a time of kind of chaos. It's like it's chaos and transition.
Right.
You have all the, you have the League of Villains. There's still the attacks. There's still this kind of eerie feeling after, after All Might pretty much steps down, and he has to step up during that moment, and has to grow at a rapid pace.
Right. Because this is the moment to kind of strike. I mean, they haven't been able to assume full power because All Might has got in their way, and All Might is really still. I mean, albeit that All Might kind of lost the war, he won the battle in facing One for All and managing to lock him up behind bars. But they kind of won the entire war in that sense because All Might's now out of commission, so they know this is the time to strike, and they're sitting, like I talked about it in the beginning of that Meta Liberation Army type of deal. They're sitting in there, and I'm talking about the League of Villains. They're sitting in their, the bando or whatever it is. They're sitting there and they're wondering like they aren't strong enough. They aren't built enough. They don't have any influence. They don't have any numbers, and they can't really do anything. And it's not until the Doctor Ujiko comes in, and because they're trying to necessarily find the next step and find the thing and trying to control the giant Megazord that lives in the forest.
Yo, that was so random, but so like I don't know why was One for All just keeping giant just tucked in the forest.
It was meant always as a last resort, because it was meant like in case something happened to me. This is kind of like our trump card. This is in case, and I think he always knew something would happen to him, because as long as the symbol of peace is after him, like, and this war is being waged, like All Might is the reason why All for One looked like the mangled mess that he did when they fought. that he had to build he's barely operating. He's operating on like this mobile life support, as opposed to he doesn't even have a face. Like he's been blown
Yeah.
off to bits. Um, so this was always meant as the trump card. Um, but the idea that Tomohiro Shigaraki kind of still has to earn that. I mean, Dr. Ujiko pretty much said like you have to earn his trust, and he has to see that you were strong enough to be able to do these things before you can ever control him. Until then, he will destroy all of you, and that's kind of what the Daika City arc, the Meta Liberation Army arc, kind of was, where they go into the city, 6-7 people strong. They're like they're currently being affected by, I think one of the guy in charge, Destro, or Redestro at least. He steals like their dealer or something, and he's got to go back and it's like, yo, we're gonna, we got to get our dealer, and they try to make a pact and all this other thing. If you read the arc, it's pretty long and it's pretty fucking fun, to be honest with you. Like, it's something
No,
that I recommend.
it's definitely a really good arc, and partly because reason why I love it so much is there are no heroes in that arc. Like, it's really villains versus villains.
Heroes, at least, yeah.
Yeah, no major heroes, I guess you say. But it's like it's villains versus villains, and you really get to see, Shigaraki really step into what One for All had planned for him. Right. Because even at the end of the first season, or the when the big battle between One for All and All for One happened, and One for All was losing, or he sent Shigaraki on to escape. He pretty much tells him like you're the real purpose here. Like, you're really the vessel here, and I'm just here to kind of push you into what I want to be. And when you look at the Daika City arc, you really start to see him like, okay, this is my purpose. This is what One for All wants me to become.
Right. And go ahead.
Oh, and like when you're talking about them, the League of Villains struggling at that moment, like you said, like they're in the projects, like they're hungry, they're starving. And I kind of like that sense of like realism that they put in there, because he's like, we could be villains, but we have no monetary anything. Like, we really can't do any of our ideas or our plans without any.
They have no power. They have no army. They're gonna run into the same problem that they kind of go against all the time. Where, I mean, they could steal, I guess, a set of kids, but like, what does that accomplish ultimately? Do you get to take over a city? Do we be king? Or are the heroes vanquished? No, nothing really solves this problem. They could cut off Overhaul's arms until they could cut off the rest of his limbs, but what really does that accomplish? Even with the bullets that they have that erases quirks, they have all of that, but again, what can they accomplish? Can they replicate those bullets? No, because they have no money, because they're poor. Can they assume power by defeating villains? No. I mean, defeating heroes? No, because so many heroes are up against them. There's a Billboard top 100 list of heroes, and any one of them, any top 40 hero could smash them in the face and end them entirely. So it's like they go against the same problem. And we talk about this arc, and I don't think we have to go through it entirely, but it's once again, it's a really powerful arc in terms of just, you get a lot of backstory on the villains, and you got a lot of history on them, and you see the growth of them, and you see the kind of darkness that has been seeded inside of them, and that has blossomed. And what have they grown into at the end of this arc? And what if they've grown into, they legitimately hustled their way through this entire arc, and now at the end of the arc, Shigaraki's sitting there, he's sitting on his throne with like this like fur coat and like new sneakers and like money. Like, this is like not like completely lavish, but they have attained everything that they wanted. They have an entire army. They have people that they are supporting them on, without any fail. They have the technology, they have the communications, they have the money, they have the people, they have the power, they have everything at the end of that arc. And that is what's truly scary. And what's even more scary is that until the end of that arc, none of the heroes in the other city knew what went on. And
Yeah,
that was what was really scary about it, because it was this entire sort of assimilation of power, and it's an entire regime change in that city, and it's such on the outskirts of everything. Even the destruction of itself, they said the destruction of itself rivaled, it's even bigger than the Kirishima one, which was the one between One for All and All Might, and it rivaled that one. It was even bigger for that, but they have no idea what went on over there, except that there was a major regime change. And there's so many things that go on that leads us into this arc with all the intel and Hawks and the doctor and the transition of Tomura Shigaraki moving on from that point. There's so much going on. It's kind of like why the story is finally reaching its big climaxing moment.
definitely. And we're going back to the Daika City arc. Um, one of the big things here is who Shigaraki is fighting, which is another villain named Redistro, who is the descendant of a villain before named Destro. And really, Destro's really whole movement was behind the liberation of metahumans. So he wanted metahumans to live separate, be separate than people who do not have power, so they're able to use their powers freely however they want to. There is no kind of constrictions around how people can use their powers. As you can tell, there's rules and regulations of how heroes can even use their own powers. Like you have to get licenses, these things. um and Redestro was really one of those people who wanted to relive that mission. And the Daika City arc is a battle between the League of Villains and uh and what was formerly known as the Metahuman Liberation Army. And as you see that, you see in that battle between Shigaraki and Redestro, which is a great battle, by the way, which was really amazing to read and see. But you see, you first you tap into Shigaraki's backstory of just like who is this kid and how did he end up, becoming who he is today. And as you look into his backstory, you kind of see the similarities between him and Deku. Of he really didn't have a quirk until it randomly kind of came up when he lost control of his emotions. And you see that, but this battle, you see Redestro bow down to Shigaraki. And I think that was just a really big moment. That was kind of that was chapter 239. It was the end of that battle, but it's a really big moment because you really get to know Shigaraki does get everything that he needs. And Redestro, as he bows down to him and say like he's this new leader, Shigaraki's kind of just like, yeah, I'm cool being your leader, but I'm only really using you guys so I can get the things that I want. Like he really doesn't care about their mission. He just cares about what they can offer him to help his own mission.
Right. I mean, it's an end for a means, because he has everything that he wants through them, as opposed to, I mean, it's a very radical view, and it's something, it's similar to the radical views of Stain that kind of shape the way people are in the arc. And it's kind of like why I love this show, and the underlying reason why I love this show, because everything isn't so singular. And everything isn't so black and white like heroes and villains. And you see a character like Hawks, for instance, who is kind of like, he is the spy, but you're kind of wondering, is he playing both sides? Um, but he's 100%. I mean, it looks like he's just 100% a spy for them. Um, but there he is someone who is a shades of gray, because I feel like he does believe kind of a little bit in what they're preaching from, their book, and the liberation army, meta liberation army, and all this other stuff in the book that was kind of let out there by the original Destro. He kind of believes all of that, but it's like also like, but he's a hero and he has to deal with all these things as well. So it's a very interesting kind of way that we get there. And I love that, at the end of the arc, it's kind of like, whoa, we are at this moment that is kind of like it's very nuts.
Yeah, And I like how you said it is at the end of that arc, it's it's like it's a haunting image you get at the end of
Hmm.
just, Shigaraki sitting on this throne and him looking at, tens, hundreds of thousands of villains, and they're just like, they're all behind what he wants to do. They're all
Right.
behind, like, let's get rid of the hero. Like, and they end on this image, and like you said, like, none of the heroes truly understand what happened in Daiga City. Like, they know that a catastrophe happened. They know that, people have, heroes died. Like, there's this big catastrophe, but they don't truly understand the circumstances that are surrounding it, and like what's really what's coming up next.
Right.
What that battle really meant. So you end this arc really with, this eerie feeling of like, oh crap, like what is about to go on next. Like they are, you know, it really starts ramping up. And we even talked about this when I went over the overhaul arc on a previous episode of that arc. The overall arc really was a turning point for My Hero. They really started to ramp up on the stakes and the things that are truly happening, and kind of the darkness that's happening in the story now. You're starting to see more people die. You're starting to see like kind of the more sinister kind of come out, and I've been enjoying it so much, because they're really taking this story, something that was kind of once really, I won't even say once, but like it was lighthearted in a sense. Like there's some lightness to it, and they're kind of taking that lightness away. And I'm excited to see how they're doing it, because it's still very enjoyable to read. It's not like too intense to the point where it feels like they're trying too hard, but it adds more pressure, and it adds more kind of like, oh man, like what's gonna happen next. It keeps you more on the edge of your seat now. And when I first started watching the show, first started reading it, I was really wondering if they would go this far. I'm just like, like, even like I said before, like All For One didn't even die. They didn't kill him, and he was like the big bad villain. All they did was really lock him up. So I'm like, oh man, like what's gonna happen next? But as after this overhaul, you really start seeing things like kind of it gets much more dark, and it gets much more heavy. Um,
I want to ask you just in general, and I know this is your show, but I'm so like interested in all these things that are going on. So, but I want to ask you just about now. Now we talk about the League of Villains and their development, but let's talk about the heroes, for instance, right? Because they're all going through their own little bit of development. I want to know what's kind of like the most interesting part to you. Is it kind of the build of Endeavor as becoming the number one hero and kind of like assuming that role and whatever it is it the sort of the double agent Hawks, who it's like, did he kill Best Genius or didn't he kill Best Genius? We don't know. Or is it the development of the kids who seem to be, and this is kind of like a wild statement, um the students and just society itself, there's so much pressure. And I still think, once again, this is all stemming from All Might stepping down as a symbol of peace, and I know he feels a lot of pressure for all this as well. um the kids themselves essentially being thrown into war and having to be prepared for war, and they don't know it yet. They don't know it at all. They still don't know it currently.
yeah, I don't
um
know why they keep doing this to them, where they will just be like, "Hey, we're about to meet up here at this time, but we're not gonna tell you why. Just come
but
suited up and prepared." They did that.
right. But I
They
think, you know what? I think it's for I think it's more so for people don't exaggerate, or people, because ultimately these are still kids. These are 16-year-old kids, right? But you're kind of like unknowingly throwing them into war. And while they are prepared in some instance because they have gone against sort of major villains and they have held their own, they're still kids. But they're throwing them into this war because all the intel they've gotten and the police and everyone, the FBI, whoever it is, investigation, all the intel that they've gotten have said like this is big. We need everyone involved. So I'm kind of interested in terms of your take, in terms of like what's the most interesting thing to you about this? Is it any of the three that I name? Is it something else? Like what's been most interested for you on the hero side of development?
I think for me on the hero side development, I've kind of talked about this before, but I really do and have been enjoying the growth of Endeavor. Like that has been one of my favorite parts of all of this because before when we first meet Endeavor, we really we see this kind of hard ass, this fiery, no pun intended, but like this really intense hero who is just dead set on beating All Might. That's our introduction to him. But when this, once now when you see him, there's this like sense of maturity in him, but like you can tell that he takes these stakes really serious. And you really can say you really see that when he takes on Deku, Bakugo, and Todoroki as he brings them all in to work for his agency. Mm-hmm. And him knowing in the back of his mind of like, no, Hawk passes him the secret message that in 4 months, there's going to be this big attack.
I would say that with that moment, a very dramatic moment, even in like, it's something that I'm sure that will be amplified 100% in the actual show whenever we get there, probably like 2020 or 2023 or what the hell it is. But whenever we get there, but a truly dramatic moment to actually read. And I love the way that they did the panels and the text, and they kind of like everything is kind of like standing out, and you're like, holy shit.
Like the panels where like it's just the eyes, or it's like a very close up on their face.
Just the words to me, just even the words and like highlighting the words, and it was like second word. I mean, I wouldn't be able to decipher that at all from just the speakers thing. I'm like, all right, whatever, man. This is the second time you telling me this. I heard you the first time.
Yeah.
But just to kind of decipher that and figure all that out, I'm just like, whoa, this is heavy shit. But yeah, I mean, I think Endeavor has just been amazing thus far in this arc.
He has been, and I think one thing that isn't, once again, one thing I've really been enjoying about Endeavor is that they don't say things, but they allude to things. And I feel like during this arc, you start seeing him grow as a man, especially with his family. And they have the moment where he brings them over for dinner. You meet all his family. You kind of see the dynamic, but he kind of looks like a man that's preparing to die. Mm-hmm. Of just like how he's now interacting with his kids, the things that he's doing, like his level of protection for his. Of him trying to make it right, with his sons and all that. Like he looks like a man that is preparing to die, and because he understands the stakes that was going to happen. He understands that when we go into this battle, lives might be lost, and one of my life might be one of those lives, that's taken. And you just see him,
right?
Yeah, and you just see this shift in him of just even how he just interacts and how he does things and how he's even coaching the new big three of them coming in and really he's pretty much like, listen, I'm gonna get you guys to the top level as fast as possible. Like he is fast tracking like their education. And you just see this different type of guy show up. And I think it's really beautiful to see, because just the development of it, and especially really after his battle with the Nomu, which we figure out it's a stronger, more like an updated version of it. Even after that battle, he's really like, oh, like what is about to come? What is really about to happen? What is about to come?
Yeah.
But Endeavor's growth has been something that has just really been great to watch, and great to just see how they've been writing his story and how they've been making him into the number one hero, and him like figuring out like, bro, like there's some things that I used to do before that don't work anymore. You know, him really taking that mantle and really being like, no, I'm the number one hero now. This is how I have to change, and this is how I have to show up.
Right. I'm super interested thus far. I'm kind of interested in like I'm interested in it all, obviously. I love this friggin' thing. I'm interested in it all because there's so many instances on the hero side where there's so many, it's like development, and they're all building up in the same direction for something, right? Because to me, I mean, obviously one of the key characters in this that they've developed through this last arc, maybe the last two arcs, is Hawks, who is the number 3 hero, just in general, or maybe he's number 2 now.
I think he's number
Either way,
2.
okay, so obviously they have they're supposed to have a relationship similar to All Might and Endeavor, but they don't have the same kind of like vitriol and hate, even though all the hate came from the Endeavor side. But Hawks is kind of laid back, and he's kind of a cool guy, so he's not really gonna have that hate. Endeavor's
Yeah,
more
Hawk
like a
is
tight
definitely
one.
TYN. He's definitely
Right.
So
Definitely.
and yeah, sorry I didn't mean to cut you off too, but
No, go ahead.
I enjoy Hawk too, because I think Hawk definitely adds a sense of coolness. like Hawk's a cool character. He seems like a cool guy.
Yeah, I think just in general, because I mean he is the only one who is able to infiltrate them kind of justly so. And I think he's able to infiltrate them because he kind of still does believe in all of the things that the Liberation Army is kind of about. And first of all, the Liberation Army feels like they have one on the inside. They do need someone on the inside. Um no one necessarily trusts him outside of Twice. Um on that side, rightfully so, by the way, because he is a hero and they hate all heroes. But
yeah.
no one trusts him outside of Twice. But even reading this, it's like, do I even trust him? For a long time, I wondered if he actually killed Best Genius, but it kind of looks like he's actually playing the double agent role, just because of how like he's really trying to. He's the intel for the FBI. He's also the intel for Endeavor, because I think he felt like he also needed to tell Endeavor to get these kids up to speed, as opposed to letting the police handle this all and like trying to figure out how to handle it from there. Um, but he's an interesting character, and he is, he's someone who just he's he's just different from most of the heroes and most of the structural heroes and all the other stuff. He's very laid back, he's very cool, and it's no wonder why he's so popular. Um, I even think I don't know if you wanted to speak more about Hawk, but I also wanted to speak about the kids as well. Um,
No, definitely. I think we kind of covered Hawk. I think, I was in that moment too with you where I was like, is he gonna cross them? Like, how he was. He did have me on, on edge of like, dang, I wonder if he's really gonna cross the heroes, or is he really, working with them. He plays his double agent role really well.
yeah, I think
But
so.
and I think as much as they keep him cool in interactions with other characters, his like inner dialogue of he's kind of frantic, like he's really actually nervous about what's coming. He has these moments where he's talking to himself and he's like, bro, like I have to not make a single mistake, pretty much. Like he had like even the point where he told them like, so we have to stop communicating the way we're communicating. Like we have to communicate in complete code now, because
Mhm.
like he's so on edge of what might happen if he gets caught.
Mhm.
And I think those moments are the moments I enjoy the most with him, because once again, he is this cool character. He is this character that's really personable. Like everybody likes him, even if they may not trust him or not, like people like him. And but to see him in like have those inner monologues of he has this cool exterior, but interior, like inside he's just like he's frantic.
Yeah. Yeah.
um but no, like but no, Hawk was definitely he's definitely a good piece and a great component of all of this, because really without him, they have no plan.
Yeah,
Um
I think without him, there's also the, you know, you don't build up there's an uncertainty kind of thing. There's a story type of thing. You kind of need that double agent, and they're also incorporating a new character that's like cool, and you see how, you know, things go from there. But you know, I quickly wanted to touch on also the kids and their kind of development. I think a lot of, I mean, outside of Deku himself and maybe just, you know, Todoroki and Bakugo as well, all of their development kind of happens off screen. It is hinted that they do have a sizable amount of development. They're doing their work studies as usual. They're getting stronger. They're going through these real life situations. They're doing all these things. So they are becoming quite formidable. And they're still in their first year, which is like blowing my mind.
yeah,
It's
like
still
this
like
like
there's 3 more months of like their first year. And they're like, oh my God, I can't wait for 3 more months. Um, but they're still in their first year. But probably the most significant change is that like Deku is now acquiring quirks from the past users of All for One. Um, and it's a phenomena that hasn't been with any of the other All for One users. Um, and it's something new, and they're going through it as they're going through it. He's already got the Black Whip one. Apparently, he's going to learn how to fly. That's cool. Um,
yeah, that's yeah, they're definitely they're loading my man up. Like he's turning into a creative player now.
yeah.
Um, you ever
Yeah, I'm not sure how I
like
feel all about this. That you're getting also like you got one of the strongest quirks, but then you're also getting like mad supplementary quirks as well, like you're Batman or something with a
yeah,
utility belt
he's
of like other
definitely
quirks.
yeah, he's loading up. It's like when you create a player on 2K and give him all the badges. Um,
Yeah.
that's kind of what's happening with him.
It's like
Uh,
Mega Man, where you get all the extra powers, like you get the Cutsman's type of thing, and then you get like the fire guys thing and like the water guys thing and all these other stuff like that. So he's loading up on quirks. So I'd say that's pretty the most sizable development. But they're also preparing for, to me, there's so many scenes. I mean, I could go 2 hours on this, but we're just not going to. But like there's so many things. I love the scene where the teachers are in there and you get the sense of kind of like the seriousness where they're talking about like the government agency wants us to do like these little sessions, these little like these work study. Essentially, they want them to go harder in work study. And I was like, are they preparing these kids for war? That's insane. And they're like, they just want them to be prepared for kind of like any instance that happens. So it's like, you know, they're going to need all of the manpower that they get. And it's kind of like they're continuing to build up to this moment. And then, but, you know, in terms of, you know what? I don't know if you have anything to say about Heroes, or the rest of the heroes. Did you see anything necessarily that you like enjoyed?
I think one thing that um outside that we were talking about, but even just a supporting cast, you can really start to sense that these kids have really gone through a lot. Really gone
Yep.
through a lot their first year. And they really um you could kind of sense an emotional type of toll that's kind of taking on them. Like they care for each other so much more now, and they're like
Hmm.
pushing each other so much harder because of all the things they have been through, all the things they have seen. um and you can start seeing it in just in the little scenes of just like how they interact with each other now.
Yeah.
um and it's crazy to see the think about, because once again, like you said, they're only in their first year. So it's like after this year, like how much more, how much bigger are they gonna go with this? But it's for the hero side, you're really starting to see, like I said, like just the growth and maturity of just heroes just all around.
Yeah.
Um, the stakes are just so much higher now, and you're just starting to see who's stepping up. Even in my favorite character, Bakugo, like you know he's kind of having this endeavor moment where he is this hothead, he is this guy, this very arrogant guy, but when he joins the agency, even he's like, listen, I need to find out what my weaknesses are so I could become stronger. There's this sense of humility. There's this sense of they've seen so much that they understand, like, listen, just knowing how to use my power isn't enough anymore. So it's been, for the heroes, it's been great to see that growth in it, and kind of that that humility that's starting to come with them
and just
as they grow.
Hero and the responsibility that it has, 100%.
Yeah, definitely. And after all this, I think one moment that really did hit me, though, and it's really big, because this is kind of the moment where the heroes get the intel, and we kind of talked about it earlier before, but was the when Eraserhead and President Mike have to go see their friend, who is a current Nomu, and we kind of figure out the backstory of Nomus, and to figure out they're these puppets, pretty much. They're deceased heroes or people that are being used as puppets, and their quirks are being used. And you see this moment of Eraserhead talking to what was formerly his friend, in a sense. And having this emotional moment of him trying to kind of tap into, like, yo, I know you're still in there. I know you're in this Nomu, this different form, but, like, I know you're still in there.
Like, his soul is still in there, despite everything that has happened. His soul is still in there.
Yes, and just that slight moment of his friend coming back and just being like, hospital, and that just tad bit of information that just really opens up the floodgates of what they can do now to stay ahead of things.
It's I was going to talk about that moment too, because just real quickly, in that moment, the words that he says in that instant is hospital, and it kind of leads up to this chapter we're talking about, right? Like, we're coming kind of full circle at this point, because that's kind of like the key thing that they had. And there's also at that point, they announced that there's a disturbance at a hospital, and then you kind of go to a scene, and it's like Shigaraki with mad mechanical tubes in him being like rocked to death. And you see Dr. Ujuko, pretty much what he's doing is he's giving him all of the power, and it's kind of going to be scary about what he actually becomes. But we haven't talked much about, like, Tomura Shigaraki's, like, post transformation, post the actual thing, because he's seeking more power. He's like, yo, I'm done playing around with these heroes. Like, it's time to fuck shit up. Like, that's essentially what it is. His power has evolved, but he doesn't even want he doesn't want to give, I don't even want to give him the chance. Like, in 6ix9ine voice, like, you're not even gonna get the chance.
Stupid. Like,
yeah, you're not even gonna get that opportunity to kind of fool with me. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to essentially become stronger. And I think what the doctor is doing is kind of like, to me, what I think he's doing, it's preparing his body so he's able to hold multiple quirks, similar to All For One. Because it even is hinted at the fact that he's like, listen, I'm going to give you a power that even All For One can wield, and that is One For All. So I'm going to give you this power, and hope that your body can sustain it. And if you do, you will be the ultimate weapon in itself. So that itself is kind of scary at all. But he hints at the hospital part of the entire thing. And we get to the disturbance at the hospital, and then we learn about the doctor. I think all the intel is pointing to the same place. They get the picture with the little Nomu in the background, and we figure out that Nomu is kind of like the warping Nomu. It's the reason why they're all just kind of like disappearing, from just from transport from here to there. And the last thing they want to do, and it's a similar thing, they're learning from their mistakes in the previous arc, where they originally had all of them arrested when they jumped in and ganged up to save Bakugo, before the big All Might and One For All fight. But they already had him there, and then they kind of like just transported themselves, and he was like, oh, I lost them, like, ugh. And they want to get rid of that type of deal, and they realize like you get rid of the doctor, you get rid of a lot of the all of our problems that we've been going through. So it's kind of like leading up to this moment that we have in this chapter. Everything is leading up. I mean, you talking about, and it's even stuff that I never actually like saw in the moment, but I'm seeing as I'm reading this thing back. And it's like it's leading up there, it's leading up there. The fact that the doctor that was Deku in episode 1 is the same doctor that is
Yeah.
now is blowing my mind still. Like, because I mean, obviously they look similar, but I didn't think they were the same. I was like, God damn, pal. Um, but there's so much things that are just building and leading and leading. It's beautiful.
It is. And I think the real battle that we're really building up to here is Shigaraki versus Deku. Like, this is the real battle that we have not seen yet, that they have been just teasing so much throughout the series. And I think this is really like where all that kind of comes to, it's all coming together. And this is
Right.
a moment where we're going to get that. And
You have
like,
that. I think also before you say anything, I also think that we're gonna get a moment um with Todoroki and his dad, because this is the first time they're fighting on the same side ever. Um they're legitimately kind of like they're fighting the same kind of war together. And yeah, one is the number one hero, but this guy is like the number one draft prospect ever, right? Like right now. So you kind of get that as well.
yeah, definitely. And like, that is another thing that, like, throughout this story of just My Heroes overall, there's so many different little storylines that have, really are just really compelling. And it's really nice to see that, in this battle, we're starting to see some of those things that happen. Like you said, like, Todoroki and his dad finally fighting together. Like, what happens then, when, they have the long history of a rift, now they're heading into war pretty much together, where, they have to protect each other. Um, I'm excited to see what they do with Bakugo, a guy who has, who has the same goal and who is a key opponent just like Deku. And just seeing what do they do with him. Do we get a moment where Deku and Bakugo like work together to, defeat Shigaraki? Like, there's so many things that we are about to that they're about to see, that, moments that we have kind of been waiting for, moments that we have been just, really been, in a sense, imagining in our own head of how it's going to happen, and now we're about to really start seeing it happen.
Yeah.
And it's really fun. And I'm really happy how they did this. I'm really happy of how intense they've made this. Because they could have, spoon fed us, what we wanted. They could have made this such a, like, in a sense, a smoother process, but they didn't. They added like a lot of stake. They added a lot of, um, a lot of pressure in the situation. They kept us on the edge of our seat of even just how Shigaraki get to the point of where he's kind of this king of villains. How he even got there was kind of like, oh my god, like, you're on the edge of your seat. And I just love how they kind of just tied all these things together, and kind of let us wait for it, let it marinate, let us kind of, second guess things, and want to see how things are going to work out. And now they're starting to tie those together. And I, just applaud to them of just how well of a job done to keep us interested in it. Because I really feel there was kind of a moment where I was like, all right, this is getting boring to me.
Yeah.
You know?
I guess, when you see it as part of the bigger picture, it becomes a lot more thing. I agree with you in that aspect. I thought, just at various points, I wouldn't say it was getting boring, because I love this entire show. And I love this entire premise of things. But I think when you're going through the things, and you're not really seeing like, okay, we're leading up to something big, and when you eventually get there, I mean, this is all paid off. Like, we're looking at all this in the background, and we're just like, yo, this is wild, actually. Like, all of this is kind of coming together, and all of this is building to this one kind of singular moment. So I think there's so much going on here. I think we're in for something really, really big. They seem to capture the professor, or they're on their way to capture the professor. Who knows if the professor will snake out their grasp? If Shimura Togoroki, not Shimura, uh, Shi- Tomura Shigaraki, will bust out that like lab thing and start like choking people and disintegrating their throats. Who knows if all that will happen? But
Yo, he does have like a really like he does have like a real super villain
yeah,
type of power. Like,
yeah, it could end
just
people really, really quickly.
in like not just like end them, but like like it's kind of like mutilating them, like just making their body just decay. Like that's such a super villain type, you know quirk to have. Um, quick question though,
Sure.
outside of Deku versus Shigaraki and all that, who are two or like a villain and a hero that you want to see go like head to head with each other during this? Like,
Um, let's see. I can say I don't know. Hmm. I want to see. Oh, there's a couple things that I want to see. What's Homegirl with the shape shifting type of ordeal, and now she can
oh,
shape people's quirk. Um, from the Paranormal
Toga.
Corporation, Toga. Yeah, so she's got some beef with what's her face? Floaty boots.
Oh, um,
There's so many
you're a
names. It's why I can't.
yes.
Yeah, Yura. I think it's Uraraki or something along those lines. But she's got a lot of beef with Ochako Uraraka. There you go. Um, so Toma has a lot of beef with her. Toga is just like, well, I would say the beef of just like, whoa, they both kind of like the same guy, and it's like also like, bitch, don't steal my man type of ordeal.
Dan, they're really gonna have a Monica Brandy moment.
Yeah, they might. I mean, you know what? You know what's so fly? You know what's so fly? That's go understated in that whole like, we just saw that the overhaul thing. Deku did that in front of both girls who dig him, and it's like it was some super fly shit. And both of them were extremely. I don't want to say the word I'm going to say. I feel like we should just PG on this. But both of them were extremely, I will say aroused when they saw their man Deku coming out the sky with a giant fist and destroying people. So you know what I'm saying? It's like, come on, Deku, it's actually killing it right now. But that's something that we could see. Um, you know,
Definitely. Um, well, pal, I'm very happy that you came. Thank you so much for coming and joining me to talk about this amazing kind of like this just amazing story, this amazing build up that
hmm
we are about to fully experience together. Um, you know, yeah. Oh, can I can I do like lookout stuff? Can I talk about that?
um, you can tell them that you can follow the lookout, but I think we can spread much more of the joy a little bit later on.
Okay.
But we
So
do have things planned, yeah, for sure.
so if you are following the RNC Radio Live on Twitter, on Instagram, you should now follow at the Lookout RNC on Twitter. Um, very big things coming soon. But yes, follow the new page or our new page, all things anime, all things manga. Um, yeah, follow us at the Lookout RNC on Twitter. You can follow me at Jamal SLM on Twitter and Straw Hat LJ on Instagram. Uh, Mills.
Yeah, you can follow me at MealCV on Twitter. That's where you should pretty much follow me. I'm not gonna promote my Instagram. I don't really got a lot of things going on there, but Oops, sorry. But yeah, definitely follow me on there and stay tuned. We have a lot of stuff coming. I'll just say that we do.
Yes, definitely. Once again, thank you so much for coming, Mills. Always a pleasure having you on. To whoever everybody's listening, thank you so much for tuning in. Once again, stay plus ultra. Peace.